Now, I happen to be, and I looked over here, my two friends are not here, I think they're coming back, but ranked normally as one of the most, or the most conservative member of the Senate. And yet, I'm a big spender in two areas. One is national defense, and one is infrastructure. I think that's what we're supposed to be doing here. I'm a little disturbed, more than a little disturbed, because when I chaired this committee in 2005, we had our last transportation reauthorization bill that we had. It was a 286.4 bill, and if you take the math that Senator Balkis mentioned is accurate. If you divide that out, it'd be $48 billion a year for the 6 years, but you take the transit out, it'd be around $42 billion. Now, we have some pretty persuasive evidence that even with that amount of money, at that time, that barely maintained what we have today. Here's the big problem, because the problem is we need to have more money generated for that purpose. And I would respectfully disagree with Ms. Thomas in some of these areas, because one of the problems we've had, I can remember back in the days when we always had a surplus in the Highway Trust Fund. And in addition to the problems that we have that have already been mentioned in terms of fuel efficiency and all that, one of the problems we had, everybody, and this is the nature of government, they all want to hitchhike on anything where there's a pot of money. And so they all came in. They say, well, we want our bike trails in there and we want all this stuff. It used to be just bricks and mortar and maintenance and bridges. In my state of Oklahoma, I think we're ranked last. I'll ask Mr. Ridley to see if he agrees with this. Either Missouri or we are ranked last in the condition of our bridges. We had a bridge in Oklahoma City that dropped concrete on a lady. It killed her. She's a mother of 2 small children. This is a real serious problem that we have, and we've got some ideas on what we want to do to correct this problem. Let me ask Mr. Ridley, if you could talk about some of the federal red tape that would make our dollars go further, could you kind of give us some ideas? And then maybe some of the other witnesses would like to share or see if they agree with your thoughts on this. The federal red tape that is using up a lot of the money that could be used for bricks and mortar.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Inhofe, you're exactly right. Exactly how much money you would save by the bureaucratic system that we've now put in place. The chairman made mention earlier about the trust fund that was enacted in 1956 when President Eisenhower then signed in the interstate bill. We've used those funds in 2 ways that has been a detriment on the trust fund. One is the bureaucratic regulations that we have to go through that really create no value, and the second is that those funds are used for anything and everything other than what their intended purpose was for, and that's to build and maintain the national highway system. The regulations that you speak of, surely we could all agree that working within existing right-of-way, the footprint of an existing facility, and that if all we're trying to do is to keep that system in the state of good repair, to replace the existing pavement in kind, not add capacity, but just allow us to rebuild that system. Surely if we had the chance to be able to rebuild bridges on our interstate system and replace it in kind where we stay within our existing footprint, not add additional right-of-way, not have to move utilities, not add capacity, that we ought to be able to do that simply and efficiently with federal funds or a joint use of state and federal funds. Yet today we cannot. An example of that would be on South Canadian River out west of Oklahoma City on I-40. We have a bridge that has a sufficiency rating of less than 40, 2 bridges, eastbound and westbound. They are functionally obsolete and structurally deficient. They're only 30 feet wide. They were built under the old standards back in the early 60s when we first built the interstate system. Both those bridges need to be replaced. We have the money set aside to be able to do that. We have been 15 months going through some 12 different studies that have to be done in order for us to rebuild those 2 bridges, which seems somewhat ridiculous to me to be able to put back a bridge. When we get all said and done, we're still going to build the bridge. It's going to be in the exact location of the existing ones, and we create no value with the studies and the regulatory efforts that we have to go through.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, could I just ask one more question of these 3 witnesses here? would you, in terms of streamlining, because we talk about this all the time here, what areas do you see, and Mr. Cox, perhaps you could start off, where we could actually get a lot more roads for our dollars in terms of streamlining? I know pretty much what the situation is in Oklahoma. What is it in Wyoming?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, first of all, avoid adding any additional regulatory burden to the next bill. I'm in broad agreement with Oklahoma's statement that against the backdrop of really limited funding, limited fundraising ability perhaps for the highway program, one of the most important things to look at is what are the bureaucratic roadblocks and the bureaucratic costs in implementing a federal funding program. So we're very concerned about standing up any new federal regulatory processes. Last year's draft bill, talked about at least 2 new offices within the USDOT. We couldn't support that at all. And Mr. Chairman, also one other comment I would say is reiterating what I said in my testimony is give NEPA hard deadlines for every applicable comment period. Give them a timeline, and a failure to tender comments, particularly on the part of resource agencies, equals concurrence. In our world, where we have rulemaking authority that we have to implement in a wide variety of areas, we go out for public comment, we publish, go out for public comment, take that comment, take it into consideration, make a decision, make the rule.
Yeah, well, and my time has expired, but do you generally agree with that, Mr. Cooper? Just kind of yes or no?
Senator, I do.
All right. What I'd like to do, for the record, is ask each one of you to kind of list those areas, such as you did and several others have, and try to attach something on there in terms of the cost, having to do with endangered species, NEPA, and all of these things that might be seen as obstacles in terms of getting the most building out of our highway dollars. So if you could do that for the record, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.